Hello, everyone. I am Valora Washington, CEO of the CAYL Institute. That's Community Advocates for Young Learners. And it is my pleasure to welcome you at this CAYL Catalyst conversation that we're having today. Thank you so much for joining our webinar series. Every first Thursday of the month, we work to bring you timely, relevant, and important conversations with people in the field and practitioners about all of the issues that we care about today. All of these webinars are free, they're recorded, and they're available all the time on our website. Welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We are the CAYL Institute, and CAYL is guided by 5 basic principles in all the work that we do. And these principles are really our power source that we use every day to really express our vision that we believe we should be in a nation where there is high quality early care and education available for all children without cost, and it should be embedded in policy, practice, and in family engagement. You know, achieving this vision, especially right now with all the challenges we're witnessing, it seems like a moonshot. It seems like an inconceivable, far-off, lofty goal that is going to require monumental effort. But we believe these moonshots for children, teachers, and families are really possible. And they're possible because of all the historic efforts of people who've worked in this field before us, and because of all of us who are continuing to pursue this goal with the legacy that we have inherited. This goal has a very specific point of view, and that is this. We believe that every job in early care and education should be a good job. But we know the reality is that not all ECE jobs are good jobs. And the number one reason that people give for this, of course, is the very low compensation. But there are other reasons as well. In the last few months, we've really looked at many moonshots for children. We talked about how all children must be included in our vision, that no children should be excluded, especially through things like expulsions. And we believe that children should be included, no child should be excluded. But today we want to take a look at the moonshots for teachers and for staff. This month, we want to take a look at the ways in which we ensure that all early childhood education jobs are good jobs. And if you agree with that, then our adaptive challenge becomes, what do we have to do to make this happen? How do we achieve this moonshot? What are some real solutions? And do these solutions have any unintended consequences that we might have to address? What should we be doing as educators and as advocates and community members to achieve this moonshot? So we want you to join right in right now as we begin today's conversation. We are looking for your ideas. So would you please write in the chat, look around right now where you are and ask, how do we attract and keep great teachers for young children? Write in the chat, what do you think we should do? What are the solutions that you see? An anonymous person once wrote that good teachers are the people who can challenge young minds without losing their own. We really ask you, how can we not lose our minds when so many of our teachers, our educators, our staff are living in poverty? They lack significant professional development opportunities and career ladder opportunities, and they're facing all the challenges that we see around us. How do we continue to provide high quality without losing our minds? And on top of that, we in early childhood education often face so many issues of disrespect and astronomical challenges. Our knowledge and skills are often negated, denied, undervalued, despite our indisputable impact on children's lives. Jackie Spartan, a well-known commentator on many issues, once wrote a very popular book called Teaching in America. And he once said, teaching is not a lost art, but the regard for it is a lost tradition. We can certainly see lots of evidence about the lack of regard for early childhood education staff. So what happens in the professional lives of early childhood educators definitely has consequences. And we know that our commitment to this moonshot, that every job in early childhood education would be a great job, we know that this moonshot is deeply grounded in the evidence of both the immediate and long-term impact of the work that we do. It impacts children right now, and it also impacts their futures. Being an early childhood educator is clearly a job that is loved by many who find considerable professional purpose and passion in doing this work, because we know we have a high impact. Still, many people who love this work cannot or will not sustain employment in it. So now is a great time to consider, what are our next level advocacy strategies related to staffing? How do we shift the workforce narrative from staffing shortages, which everybody is talking about, and it's a serious problem? And how do we instead, or in addition, focus on ensuring that all the jobs are really great jobs, that we can really attract and keep people, because that will be a sign of a vital industry. But when I think about what a good job would be in our field, I think a good job, what makes a good job is that a job has a purpose. And we know that we have a purpose because our work serves so many societal goals. A good job, I think, also offers growth and recognition, professional and personal growth, and so that staff can continue to learn and advance with a career that has a clearly defined career ladder and incentives for doing a great job. I think a good job has to have financial equity. A good job has to offer a fair living wage with benefits and compensation appropriate to the levels of skill and experience. And a good job has to give respect, including appropriate working conditions and the tools and resources we need to do the job. So today, let's delve into what would make every job in our field a great job and what we can do about it. As we get involved in this conversation today, I want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. It's being recorded so that many of our colleagues who are with children right now can have access to it when it's possible for them. Closed captioning is available. And most importantly, at the end of this webinar, you'll see in the chat a link that will connect you to an opportunity to talk with our panelists today. If you want to talk with our panelists and ask them directly a question, please click the link that we will put in the chat near the end of the webinar. We hope that you will do that. I hope you're writing in the chat what you think makes every job a great job in early childhood education, because today we want to focus on solutions, and we want to hear the wisdom of these outstanding leaders who are working diligently and effectively to make a difference in the lives of early childhood educators to reach these moonshots for all of us. What a great pleasure it is to me to introduce to you Marcy Whitebook, a legend in our field. She's shown such courageous leadership and has been such a strong voice for early childhood educators for a very long time. She's Director Emerita, as many of you know, but she now leads leads ECHOES. ECHOES is a project she's created that connects early care and education today with its history and activism for a more equitable system. Many of you will know that she began her career as an infant toddler teacher and a preschool teacher, and she participated in teacher-led compensation movement that culminated in a nationwide effort called the Worthy Wage Campaign in the 1990s. She's so internationally known for her work, her groundbreaking work for early childhood educators, and all of her unwavering efforts to have dignity for all the people who work in our field. We're also going to hear today from Shawntel Green. She's the founder of the Early Education Career Institute, a passionate advocate for child care staff. She says that she's on a mission to provide top-notch professional development opportunities for educators worldwide. That's a great mission, Shawntel. She's a fierce advocate for the rights and well-being of child care workers, and she's really raising awareness for fair wages, good working conditions, and support for all of the people who are touching the lives of young children. Our third speaker is the innovative leader, Chad Dunkley. He's CEO of the Horizon Academy. Wow. He earned a JD degree from William Mitchell College of Law, and then he followed his mom's footsteps into early childhood education. Following your mom's footsteps is always a great idea as far as I'm concerned. He says that the moment he held his infant son in his arms, he knew that this was the important work that he wanted to do. And throughout his career, he's earned a lot of recognition. He's been the most admired CEO by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. He's been an exceptional emerging leader by Child Care Information Exchange, and he was recognized as one of his region's most outstanding leaders, being 40 under 40 at that time. Today, Chad is co-chair of the Early Care and Education Consortium, which is a national nonprofit alliance that serves 7,000 multi-site and multi-state child care programs. Huge responsibility there. He's also president of the Minnesota Child Care Association and an executive board member of the Chad Greenway's Lead the Way Foundation and a board member of the Minnesota Business Partnership. Previously, he was on the governing board of NAEYC. So together, Shawntel, Chad, and Marcy are going to help us think together about the moonshot that every early childhood job should be a good job in ways that include and extend beyond compensation, that address the practitioner's realities, and that will result and can result from our advocacy. They're going to help us think about the policy that needs to change. They're going to help us focus on workforce conditions and how we can challenge existing funding models. I'm excited to hear from these three panelists, and we're going to start today by hearing from Shawntel. Shawntel, welcome to the CAYL Catalyst. We're thrilled to have you here with us today. Absolutely thrilled. And I'm a great admirer of the work that you're doing to really promote early childhood education professional development.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm super excited to be a part of this amazing panelist group. Today, I would like to just share with you guys and be the voice of the provider. As we're looking at every ECE job as a good job, the voice of the practitioner, they used to say, there's a saying that says, whose voice is not being heard? Why are we having such challenges? How are the children? These are some of the things we have to come back to as we're looking at these good jobs. I know there's not always going to be amazing days, and how do we get people motivated to change diapers? How do we get people motivated to come into the industry and stay? For me, there's two things. I work national, teaching and training individuals in this field, from tribal programs, rural, remote programs, urban programs, over 100,000 miles over the last year, in just traveling to practitioners and providing credential training and credential support. And one of the questions on everyone's competency statements, as we're reviewing competency statements over the last 20 years, I probably read about 100,000 or more competency reflection statements. And the voice of the practitioner is consistently across the nation, I love children. They start there. More than 90% of the competency statements that I've reviewed start with, I love children. I love the children. It is the children. The children keep me motivated. So is that enough for people to come in? We talk about compensation. We talk about wanting more benefits. We talk about, the problems from the boardroom to the classroom and all of the things in the middle. But are we discussing and coming back to the table instead of making the choice for the practitioner? Have we brought the practitioner to the table? The practitioners that we are advocating for, those frontline workers, those direct service workers, the TAs, the transportation, the lead teachers, have we brought them to the table and asked them the question, why do you come back on a day-to-day basis? The uniqueness of the work that I do when I go out as a senior instructor and I train is that I have our day one employees, those individuals who are coming in to this industry without any biases. Then I also, in that same classroom, could have those individuals who've been there 1 year, those individuals that's been there 2 years, and then I have those folks who are reskilling because they've been in the industry for so long that maybe their state has now just come up with a credential that's necessary. So the uniqueness of that room can range from the day one practitioner to our seasoned practitioner who's been there for 20 plus years. So the question at the table today is, what makes ECE a good job? Although a lot of times as decision makers and those individuals who are advocating, we forget that we are a thriving industry. So that means that there are individuals who are staying in this industry, starting out as TA and moving all the way to the state and federal levels. Over the last 3 years, we've definitely seen a major impact of who stays, but the revolving door in ECE is not new. So how did we keep those steady practitioners coming in every day and doing this job again and again and again? That is the voice of the provider that I hope to give you today. So the love of children takes something. It looks like something. We have to visualize. And we always ask them, dig deeper. What does that really mean? That's not enough to come to the table every day. But it is, because they're looking at the fact that they're looking at individuals who they're able to nurture, provide great meals to, provide quality programming, provide safety, watch them thrive in the curriculum. All of these are part of the job that has to be done. The question at the table is, are we doing our part to ensure that these folks can thrive? I've had 2 tough conversations within the last week. One was a practitioner who left the industry because she actually was in the hospital, and her actually it was 2 practitioners in 2 different states who had a similar situation, and it was stress and anxiety. We're talking about TAs, lead teachers, and individual, maybe even one is a floater. So as we're looking at the stress level that is being created, did we give that ECE person an opportunity to thrive in the work that they do on a day-to-day basis? Are we putting the proper systems in place to ensure the workplace is efficient, a place for them to come and a place they can thrive in that environment? The other practitioner who happened to leave the industry stated that it was a choice of walking into our industry doors and the doors of a fast food restaurant where the individuals were treating her well. And she made the tough choice. She'd prefer to work in an environment. It did not matter. That environment did not have the compensation that we're talking about. That environment didn't pay more than what we're doing in that particular community. But it was a choice that that practitioner made that protected her well-being, her mental well-being, and she made the choice to go where she was treated well. So I know that you guys are thinking that the people are leaving because of the compensation. Compensation has always been a challenge in our industry. This is not the reason that they walk out the door, not the only nor the key reason that they're walking out the door. They're walking out the door because they are being bullied, because there's workforce harassment, because there's individuals who are dehumanizing them or forgetting to humanize the industry. Teachers are people too. So when we look at this from a perspective of a good job, we need to go back to why people came, not so much focusing on just, hey, we see the people who are leaving. If we remember and retain why they came in the first place, Some people came back to the industry to support the shortage. So there is a love here for what we do. You guys here today are part of the love for what we do. We all are advocating. We've all had that moment that we cried, in our car because something wasn't right, because we didn't have enough staff to support. No one wants to feel like they're on an island on their own in this industry. They don't deserve that. So we need to do more self-reflection. And we need to make sure that in that self-reflection, we are putting the systems in place to support them as people. Never forgetting and never taking away the fact that these are individuals, they have things going on in their backdrop, they're doing the best that they can, and have we set the expectation for correction when we hired? So 2 hiring things that I'm not hearing that could support us picking and choosing or making sure that we're matching individuals for this good job that we have available for them is, have we asked the tough question? Tell us a time when we failed you or someone failed you in education. Have them talk about it. Then tell us a time when you were successful and a challenge that you may have had with education was a solution came from the educators responsible for your education. Have them talk about it. Get to the core essence of the folks that we're hiring, making sure that we're hiring not just because of a paycheck, but also hiring because of the passion that we've always seen in this industry and the passion that exists. We should also be taking into consideration what makes this industry standardized from one place to another. Is the solution possibly right in front of us? Are we consistent with our code of ethical conduct? Because that code of ethical conduct not only supports that individual in maintaining a good job, but it also gives the clear answers to what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to do them, and whom we're supposed to go to for direction and guidance. In the job that I do, we support the laborer through apprenticeship models and support the laborer in ensuring that they have mentor systems in place. One of the challenges that is coming down the line that we're also hearing is the challenge of the practitioner who is supporting the individual who only has theory. So there has to be 3 components there: theory, practice, strategies. We need to make sure that the individuals who are responsible for supervising and running programming and educational management understands all that component: the theory, the practice, the strategy, from 2 components, from the academia world and the vocational world. So our credential criteria that are out there right now supporting vocational would include maybe a national recognized credential. So those individuals may not have formal educational processes, but did we put a bridge program to bridge both vocational and academia in place? And are we hiring individuals who understand academics, understand vocational, and also understand intergenerational workforces? That's all I have for you today. I hope that you're able to leave with some strategy, some understanding, and why we're kind of in this situation. But I definitely want us all to be able to humanize our jobs, make sure that we're humanizing those individuals who are working in the workforce, that are in those trenches, in those direct service positions. And we are recognizing that these ECE teachers are people too. Thank you so much for your time. And here's Chad.
Well, thank you so much, Shawntel and Valora. What an important topic. And I think I'm going to focus on 3 things about how to make the early childhood educator's job a good job. And the first we can't ignore is compensation and benefits. And I've been doing this a long time. And one thing I think is a big issue, so many times as providers, we are very sensitive about what our families can afford. And many times we're reluctant to go to regular tuition increases or doing the type of increase that really does give you the ability to expand wages and benefits, increase wages and benefits for early educators. And I always implore on them, I think you should think about If you don't keep that preschool teacher because you are able to keep them above a cost of living increase or increase wages and benefits so they can make this a career, think of the impact on that whole classroom. And yes, a large rate increase might mean one of the preschool children does leave, and that's heartbreaking. But if you lose the teacher, 20 preschoolers suffer. And so we do have to be more aggressive about what we truly cost. And I know there's sensitivity with families, but if we keep going down the road we're going, it's a silent crisis. We know families can't afford more, but it's our teachers who struggle. And so if you are a provider, if you give advice to providers, make sure the advice includes at least annual tuition increases. Your teachers deserve annual raises. Your rent goes up every year, and you put yourself in a real difficult financial position if you don't keep up with the cost of providing care. But also, we have to look closer at benefits. And we really need a good system. One thing New Horizon Academy recognized, and it's been exacerbated in the pandemic, is we're having to hire people who don't have as much experience or education as they did just a few years ago. And so today, New Horizon Academy has a pathway where we pay 100% of the cost of pursuing a child development associate. We also pay 100% of the cost for any of our teachers that want to pursue their associate's degree in early childhood. We have substantial tuition reimbursement to help teachers go further and get their bachelor's degree or master's degree. And often we can combine our tuition subsidies with state resources that are available that help do this to make that either no cost or free to our early educators, which is so wonderful. And then as a provider, you should have wage scales that reflect the education level of teachers. So you're really encouraging teachers to go back to school, further their education, which is great for kids, and then make sure that they do get an increase in compensation. And benefits is a huge issue in our industry. I think the statistics are very sad. Only 1 in 5 early educators in this country have access to employee-sponsored health insurance. Only 1 in 10 have access to a retirement plan with an employer match. That is crazy. Teachers have to take good care of their health. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to be reliable and dependable early educators in your classroom. And it's something that we have to commit to. So I strongly suggest you look at that. Also, paid time off. Some of the research I've read, early educators often only have access to 1 or 2 weeks a year. That means they only get a few sick days, basically. They don't even get to take time off to recharge. And we know being an early educator is complex and hard work. And recharging is one of the most important things you can do when you're in a profession so important. So I think we really have to push ourselves on wages and benefits. And I know this all comes with a cost and provides a lot of stress about what families can afford. I'm going to get to that point in the end. There is more you can do there. But as providers, we need to stop this hidden crisis. We need to push wages and benefits up so we can keep great people in early childhood classrooms. And it's going to take extra bravery. And we saw what the pandemic could do. We saw what COVID relief funds can do. Most states leave providers now on their own, and you're just going to have to do those tuition increases so you can run great programs and be proud of the work you're doing for kids and families. We also have to look at the way we support teachers, particularly when you're new to the field. At New Horizon Academy, we got rid of a 90-day probationary period, and now we call it a welcoming period. And we train all of our teachers in our schools that we all have a role to play when someone joins your team in this welcoming period. And during that welcoming period, we can't expect that a teacher fully understands how to do a lesson plan, how to do child assessment, how to do all the complex pieces that it takes to run an exceptional classroom, and that it's the responsibility of everyone in our schools to help make sure that those first 90 days go well. If that means you help do the lesson plan because you're the experienced teacher next door, but also really think about what supports teachers need in classrooms. If you're a leader of a program, we know you're busy, but the best use of your time is visiting your teachers, celebrating the exciting things they're doing in classrooms, providing support and guidance and coaching to make improvements in areas that you can improve. But it's really important that teachers feel supported. And I think that's just so important. But one of the other things, and this has also been exacerbated in the pandemic, we know that we lose great teachers, sometimes well-educated teachers, because of challenging behaviors in the classroom. One strategy that we've been implementing recently, we've introduced conscious discipline in all of our schools. And for those who don't, I would check it out. It's by Dr. Becky Bailey. And it's really bringing this trauma-informed, evidence-based social emotional learning into classrooms. And it's really retraining teachers, the adults in classrooms, to not think of challenging behavior as a reason to punish, but an opportunity to teach. We're teaching children some of the most important skills. These social emotional skills are far more important than the academic skills. And young children don't know necessarily how to deal with big emotions. And so if you don't have training that really helps teachers see children differently and give them the tools to deal with difficult behaviors, you're going to lose them. And so it really is about supporting children in the classroom. But also, no matter what we can do with wages and benefits, and again, I encourage you to be the highest paying in your region and continue to push that forward. We have to take charge of what our teachers make in this industry. But you do need to have a great culture. And sometimes we don't. And one thing we've done is we've added to our core values. Our core values will always doing what's best for children and making sure that we bring back to young children, every decision we make, how it affects young children. But it's also living this mission of continuous improvement that young children deserve for us to put in place in our classrooms, the latest research and best practices for children, which means sometimes we have to make changes in what we expect in our classrooms. But also as adults in young children's lives, we have to be the role model of what healthy relationships look like. So that means in a school, how you treat your coworkers, children are watching. How you treat a child's parents, they're watching. That's how they learn how to have healthy relationships. So we're focusing a lot on healthy relationships. That's what conscious discipline does as well. But also we added dependable. During the pandemic, we noticed that since then, directors have provided a lot more flexibility to teachers. And sometimes because if you were a little bit sick, you needed to stay home. But it's also caused a dependability issue. But in early childhood, you have to be dependable. The children are counting on you. And when a teacher that they love and are connected to, that's the best teacher to teach them skills and help them thrive. If they don't show up for a day unexpectedly, it really throws children off. And so really getting back to, this is a job that requires dependability. It's a professional job. It is an important job. And sure, you have to stay home when you're sick, but please don't take a day off because it's nice out and tell us at 7:30 when your shift starts at 8, or don't show up at 8:30 when your shift starts at 8. The children are there and they're counting on you. So rally your team around some principles that and values that you can all get around, and then hold each other accountable. And third, really important, because I know people are stressed about what parents can afford. The reality is we can't fix and make every early childhood education job a good job on parent tuition alone. We have to be advocates. It's the biggest weakness of our field. I'm so involved. I know Valora mentioned with the Early Care and Education Consortium, finally, we have a voice in Washington, D.C., a provider voice in D.C., and we're opening doors and we are pounding on tables and saying little kids and families deserve better, early educators deserve better. To solve the United States childcare crisis, we need government intervention. And it's becoming effective. It worked during the pandemic. Thankfully, we had our organization there advocating, and there are many groups. I'm not just saying we did it alone, but a provider voice is a unique voice because we could tell them the real story of what was happening during the pandemic. So please, if you're in a state that doesn't have an active childcare association, then start calling your friends. Put a group together. You have common issues. It just drives me crazy that so many decisions are made in this country without us at the table, explaining the real impact of decisions on children, families, and early educators. We have to. And last, because I know it's a short amount of time here and I will get into a discussion, it does work. I've seen it work so many times, the pandemic being one of them. The early childhood industry got a $52 billion rescue package that saved many who would not be here today if it wasn't for it. In Minnesota, I want one example. We convinced legislators in Minnesota and the governor to continue funds to provide compensation supports to early educators. Our average early educator is receiving between $1.50 and a $3 an hour supplement in their wages directly paid to providers to put into the pay of teachers. And the reason that happened, we activated our families and our early educators. And in Minnesota, legislators got 20,000 emails saying, do this for our teachers. They're amazing. They deserve it. We want them to be able to stay in our classrooms with our children. And legislators who had been in the Capitol for probably too long, 30 and 40 years, said there is never a single issue that ever came to a Minnesota legislator where they received more emails than on supporting early childhood educator grants. advocacy works, and we have to do it. And there's many other examples, but maybe we can get to that in a discussion. And I really thank you for your time. And I'm going to pass it over to obviously our legend, Marcy, who is up next.
Hi, everyone. Oops. Hi. Thank you, Laura, for your very kind words, and to your whole team for inviting me to discuss Moonshot for every early childhood job is a good job. And I started my video. Anyway. Okay. And thanks to all of you joining from different places throughout the country and from different countries to think about the question, what would it take to make every ECE job a good job? And thank you to Shawntel and Shad for sharing your perspective and many ideas. I am Marcy Whitebook, and as Valora told you, that I founded the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment in 1999 at the Institute for Labor Research on Labor and Employment at the University of California at Berkeley. Now I'm Director Emerita at CSECE, which is the national leader in early care and education research and policy and supporting educator activism. Our work acts on the premise that early educators should be valued, respected, and guaranteed economic dignity, and that the provision of ECE is a public responsibility. CSECE is an outgrowth of the compensation movement, the National Early Wage Campaign, led by early educators beginning in the 1990s. I've dedicated my life over the last 50 years to making ECE jobs good jobs, so I know just how hard it is to do this. It is a moonshot. I have a good grasp of how far away the moon is, and I know that not every shot reaches the moon. What's new now is that many, many more people are beginning to recognize that it's important to make early ECE job a good job. And this Catalyst webinar and what we've heard from people so far is a good example. When I was working as an early childhood teacher, starting in the early 1970s, nobody talked about the unlivable wages in the sector. I began working as an infant toddler teacher and started talking and meeting with other teachers and home-based providers in my community and eventually throughout the country. We were all struggling with low pay, poor working conditions, racial inequities, and the devaluing of childcare work. Okay, someone just used my printer, sorry. Our preparation failed to address the challenge we encountered working in a drastically underfunded program and the role that we could play to address them. We learned the hard way that the change we sought, rights, raises, and respect, was up to us. We educators learned that without our voices, wages and our other problems would never be seen as urgent problems that had to be solved. That's why the moonshot is so very important. But here's a warning from what I've learned. When we educators started speaking up about the low pay, we were silenced. We were silenced even by leaders in the field. Why, you might wonder? We were told that to talk about ourselves was unprofessional. We were told that to talk about ourselves was radical and that it was not in the interests of children and their parents. We were told our job was to just focus on the children. But we knew that we could not do our jobs for children and families without rights, raises, and respect. Poor pay and poor working conditions were everywhere back then, and they still are here today, despite some improvements. And it's not just in the US, but around the world. This is a very painful part of the history of ECE, because the ECE system is based on exploiting the women, particularly those of color, who do the work. The enduring inequities of low pay and poor working conditions, underfunding, racial disparities, and the devaluation of care work have been there since the very beginning. The compensation movement was dedicated to elevating the leadership of teachers in all settings. We learned and taught each other how to challenge the long-standing conditions of being silenced and excluded from places of power and influence over our lives. The negative response, the pushback, to making early childhood jobs good jobs has not disappeared. We're in a better state than we were, but it's still there. And parents rightly feel that they are paying too much, even though educators need to be paid more. That's why we need to publicly fund early childhood education the way we publicly fund K through 12. Because parents and early childhood teachers cannot and should not bear all the costs of raising the next generation. This is a responsibility of our society as a whole. I'm particularly worried by the growth of private equity firms and multinational corporations and how they are gaining dominance over community-based settings because they are exacerbating in many places the exploitation of the workforce and the extraction of public resources for profit. The exploitation of the ECE workforce is similar to the oppression faced by working class people in many other sectors and industries around the world, and we're hearing about it all the time in the news. Corporate childcare entities undermine our efforts to make early childhood jobs good jobs because they undermine the equitable benefits we hope to secure from expanded public financing. Educators working in for-profit corporate settings have the lowest average hourly wages compared to those in community-based or school-based settings and home-based care. So we are going to need to put in some guardrails if we are going to use public funds, because some of the providers will not establish well-paying jobs for all educators, for all practitioners. The questions we have to raise are who profits and to what extent from the delivery of childcare? What are the ethical dimensions of public financing and directly or indirectly supports entitles that create an inequitable profit distribution across an already very undervalued sector? Good jobs require a collective choice, collective bargaining, if you will, a collective voice as a profession. Profit-making companies have proven to be anti-organizing and anti-collective representation. As an example, KinderCare, one of the largest corporate providers of early care and education programs, expressly notes that unionization poses problems for its financial model. I want to emphasize that to create better early childhood jobs, we need the leadership of the people who work with children daily. That means not just teachers, but assistants and home providers, new providers and people who've been doing it for a long time. We need educators wherever they work to be the leaders when we're making policy. We need the people who work with children to be the ones who are in front and center in helping to design a new approach to pedagogy. Educators are told how to act and think when working with children and have been told this since ECE started, but they need to be designing their own training and learning what they think they need to learn in order to teach well. That doesn't mean they don't need professional development, but we need to be listening to them about what they think is important and how we should be thinking about them and how they should be thinking and what they think about teaching. There are many untold stories of the women who did the actual teaching of and caring for young children. ECHOS, the early childhood history organizing ethos and strategy, which is a website is part of the CSCCE website, explores the voices and women and visions of women of color, immigrant women, and working class women who have made significant contributions, but have been left out of most early childhood histories. They never just did what was asked of them. They have always been creating the everyday life and in the world of young children. And we need a pedagogy that honors their individual contributions to the world. I believe that the most important task in order to change the long history of unlivable wages of early childhood teachers is to build a community of change in the field. In the beginning of the Worthy Wage movement, our first step was to break the silence and isolation that was pervasive in the field. that continues to be important. You can learn more about the compensation movement, early wage movement, and the history of how the early care and education system evolved and the enduring inequalities that have been in the early childhood system since the beginning at ECHOS. It's an interactive part of the CSCC website. It includes a timeline, stories, papers, and multimedia clips, and it's a green website in that we're continuing adding things onto it as we learn more. We teachers use the skills we honed every day with young children, building relationships, solving problems, creating tools to facilitate learning, listening deeply, having fun, and caring for one another. Early educators today have those same skills to build a new community of change. We built our collective power to lead the National Worthy campaign in the 1990s through collective actions in 45 states, including rallies, program closures, virtual strikes, story songs. As the movement grew, we became more willing to challenge the harmful status quo. I encourage you to explore ECHOS and not to remember that rights, raises, and respect was and remains our goal. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to the discussion, if I am remembering correctly, my next step.
Yes, you are correct. Wow. I heard a lot of really important words from the three of you that we're going to explore now. And I want to remind everyone listening that in the chat very soon, we'll be putting a link that if you want to interact with Marcy, Chad, or Shawntel after this webinar ends at 5 o'clock, please click that link and you'll be able to interact with them. One of the things that I heard from all three of you was the importance of leadership from the people. This is a really important principle of the CAYL Institute. We talk about the value and importance and necessity of representative leadership. Representative leadership cannot be negotiable. That is a very important, and I hear all three of you really emphasizing how the practitioner voice needs to be better honored, respected, and put in the center of the conversation that we're having. Any more reflections on that?
As individuals who we work with the laborer and going into like workforce and workforce development, the biggest thing that we're seeing is if we're not bringing their voice to the table, they also feel disempowered in other places. We're seeing them feel disempowered in training settings, in college level classes. When we're bridging those gaps, we're just seeing that their voices are absolutely being lost in all of this. So it's so important to bring them to the table because they are the advocates and they are the individuals who've always had that voice and say that if it's compensation or if it's advocating for the children or whichever level they're advocating on, they have always been the voice. So yes, definitely bringing that voice to the table and to the forefront is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's so important to have that advocacy voice. Marcy, you know that we're contemporaries and I was there with you. I know how much courage it took. It takes today, but it definitely took back then to really bring these issues forward. And I really want to encourage people to look at the resources that we're going to be providing you after this webinar in the material we provide, but also to go to Marcy's website where she's really done a deep analysis of this history and has the voices and so forth. So you'll be able to find resources to connect with all of that in the link. Now, I want to raise a challenging question, and that is the whole issue of unionization and the role of unionization in making every job a good job in the early childhood education field. I'm wondering if the three of you can speak to this issue and the role that you feel unions can play in this effort to make good jobs. Don't be shy.
Chad, did you want to go ahead or did you?
Well, yeah, I think as employers, you get a little nervous about the concept, but I think the reality is unions have had a powerful impact on increasing reimbursement rates and doing other things, particularly at representing family childcare and brings voices together. I think the biggest failing of our field is not bringing enough voices together. on issues that matter for little kids in this country. I think as an employer, it sometimes makes you worried a bit, only because it's a different relationship, right? You don't have the individual relationship with employees. You have a different type of relationship. But candidly, the challenge in early childhood is resources. We have small ratios. We have long hours to serve working families. Anybody who's in this field, the budgets are challenged. We need to be able to increase the cost of care to what it really should be. When you look at tuition rates in early childhood and you take it and divide it by 45 hours a week when kids are attending, you pay more for a babysitter who may be 15 and can't even drive a car to watch your child while you're out for a movie than you pay for a four-year degree teacher who is well-trained to teach young children. And so I don't know if it solves the resource problem. If we're still going to expect parents to pay tuition, the models don't work. We're doing cost modeling all around the country right now. The model shows that customers can't afford the cost of small ratios and extended hours for little kids. So that's really, somehow we have to get the resources in the field. And if unions can help us do that, and they have in many places, bring it. Let's bring everyone we can into this field, and we need resources. That's the biggest challenge.
You're on mute, Mike. Okay, there you go, Marcy.
I think that when I talk about unions, I mean, historically, most of the early childhood workforce people aren't in unions. It's only some places. And there have been efforts to keep people who work with young children from organizing and having a collective voice for themselves and bargaining their jobs and their conditions. And I think, it's, and there are actually many different unions that are working in the early childhood field, but I think what I don't think people are saying we don't need to have more money into the field. I'm certainly not saying that, but I am saying that everybody who's working in the field should have a way where their collective needs as workers can be they can be represented, because when people are just negotiating their own individual benefits and salaries, that's not effective for the people doing the work. They need a place where they can have a voice with other teachers what they want. And I think we have to be, forthright about the fact that there are an awful lot of people in the field who actually think they know more than the people doing the work about what the people doing the work need. That we think about practitioners, people who we need to fix. And that's part of what they're trying to do. They're helping them to get better. And I think we really need to think about that the people who are doing the work should be teaching all of us more about what we need. And then there should be a place where their collective demands can be, organized and used in their own states and at the national level. So I think it's just a question of saying, how do you have a way of representing the people how do the people who are doing the work, the practitioners, have a way to advance their priorities and their needs and represent them when policy decisions and the distribution of money is being made. And we have to be about the fact some people don't want to do that. So
I raised this question of unionization because it is an elephant in the room that is out there that people raise. It is the position of the CAYL Institute that early childhood education should be available to all children everywhere in the United States, tuition free. Tuition free means that it is a public good and it is being funded publicly by public resources and a mixed delivery system. That is our clear view. But I think I'm raising this issue of unionization because it is an issue that is an elephant in the room that people are talking about. I'm going to give you a chance, Shawntel, to say what you think about unionization with respect to the role of early childhood jobs being good jobs.
Sure. So I think that I don't know that I necessarily agree with unionization, but I am working with the U.S. Department of Labor on apprenticeship models. And one of the things that we do is ensure that there is a standardized wage. And I am for federal dictated standardized wages. And I do believe that we do need to have same work, same pay across the nation. If you're doing the same, it was the same fight for women. It's the same fight that we've seen before. And if we're doing the same work in a program and we're meeting those career milestones, we should be considered for a standardized pay in the work that we do. The challenge that we're seeing is not even across a state line. Sometimes it's across a placation. If you have funding for one classroom through a particular grant, you could possibly be across a literal placation, the little plastic divide, and have one worker doing the same work as another worker and not being paid the same wage. And that is a challenge. It creates a challenge in the workforce. It creates a challenge in that environment. It creates a challenge for us all. So I am for standardized rates. I am for standardized wages. I don't know about unionization because unionization comes with other things, but I do think same work, same pay should be considered.
So as we're hearing here, and we've only scratched the surface, there's so many things we need to talk about. We need to talk about equity. We need to talk about pay, salary. There's so many things we need to talk about when it comes to the issues of values, justice, and equity. I hope you're going to join us in the link so that we can deepen this conversation. And I really hope you'll dig deeper into this topic by looking at the resources that we're going to provide you at the beginning of next week. This is a really important question. We've only begun to think about it. You also, if you've been listening carefully, you have heard a wide variety of opinions in this session, not just about unionization, but about a number of different topics. And that gives you a lot to think about. As we move on to think about our Moonshot series, please be aware that we are very grateful to the Eastern Bank Foundation for their support of this Moonshot series. We also want you to join us next month as we begin to talk with teachers about why they stay in this challenge field, how we have a respected and valued workforce, how even in the context of everything that's happening, people do stay in the field, and let's hear from their own voices about why they stay in the field. We're so grateful that you've joined us for this series. Lots of more issues to talk about. Please join us in the after show by pressing the link. And thank you very much for learning with the CAYL Institute today. It's always a pleasure to have you with us as we talk about these important topics. Good night.